Hey everyone, Austin here again with another Let's Play video. Today it's going to be Master of Darkness for the Sega Master System. A bit of a Castlevania clone for the old SMS. This game was actually also released on the Game Gear, and in North America it was known as Vampire Master of Darkness. Unfortunately, the Master System version never came out in North America. By the time this released over in Europe on the Master System, that system was pretty much dead here in North America. It wasn't really supported anymore. But yeah, it's a decent game. It's not my favorite. I'm a big Castlevania fan, and so when I play Master of Darkness, I just see lots of potential, that wasn't realized, unfortunately. It takes a lot of elements from Castlevania, you know, the typical platforming, the action and whatnot, but it also features some really questionable design choices that you don't see in Castlevania games. There's a reason the Castlevania series is so good. There's really great design elements that this game just eschews. It's just like, no, you know, let's just make things worse. Why not? You know, we want to be different, so let's make certain things worse, and that's... And you get Master of Darkness as a result. It's still a solid game if you got a Master System, or if you got a Game Gear, or if you're into emulating. I highly recommend still checking it out. It is a fun game, and we're gonna go through the whole game here. So yeah, before I actually kick things off, as usual, I want to give a big shout out to my current Patreon backers. Thank you guys for supporting this show monetarily through Patreon. If any of you guys watching are interested in supporting the show as well, feel free to check out the Patreon link in the description box. I'm also going to flash by the super chatters from my live streams. These are guys that basically do direct donations. I really appreciate your support. It's totally unnecessary, but I really appreciate it still all the same. It, you know, makes my time here worth it. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. There is definitely some story in this game. We're not going to really focus on it too much. And let's just go ahead and skip through that and then just get right into the game. So this game actually has 5 rounds. 4 of the rounds actually have 3 levels within them. So it's basically like round 1-1, round 1-2, round 1-3, etc., etc. Round 5 is actually just a single stage. Yeah, it's just a single stage. It's pretty short, actually, for the final level in the game, which is actually kind of refreshing, because one of the things I'm not a huge fan of with this game is the fact that it basically breaks up these levels into 3 separate stages, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. All it does is just stop the flow of the game. But that's just a minor complaint with this game. So as you can see, it's, you know, very much Castlevania-like. You know, you walk around, you attack enemies, you've got a main weapon here, which can actually be swapped out. That's one of the things that, you know, is one of the areas where it differs from Castlevania, is that your main weapon actually changes depending on the weapon you pick up. There aren't any, you know, like weapon power-up upgrades, like you've got in Castlevania. Like, in Castlevania, you basically get various whip upgrades until you're maxed out at your Morning Star whip. In this, it's just, you know, you just pick up a different weapon. So we've got this cane sort of thing here, or is it a hammer or something? I don't know. This is actually probably the most well-rounded weapon in the game, and it's actually the one I prefer the most. But you'll also get, like, a fencing sword, which has slightly more reach to it. But it does less damage. You'll also get your stock dagger that you start off with. Worst weapon in the game, but unfortunately you can actually downgrade back to it, which is one of the things I was talking about in the beginning of the video, where, you know, there's great elements in the Castlevania series, and this game does not copy some of the great elements. One of the great elements about Castlevania is that you don't downgrade your weapons, your core weapon in the game, unless you die. And, you know, that still works the same way in this. You know, if you die, you start back off with the dagger, but you can actually pick up the dagger in normal gameplay, and there is absolutely no reason for that to even be a thing. It just makes absolutely no sense, but it is a thing. And that's the fencing sword. I'm just going to go ahead and skip it. And that is actually a health refill. And you're going to see those a lot throughout the course of the game. This game is very liberal with its health drops. So, you know, if you're having a hard time with, say, the Castlevania series, you might actually want to try this out, because it is, to me, it's considerably easier. It still has some tricky sections, it's got some tricky moments, but for the most part, it's a much easier game. Alright, so one cool feature about this game, though, I do like, is that you can actually jump off stairs in this game, which is really cool. In Castlevania 4, you could let go from the stairs. You could, like, drop off the stairs, but you couldn't jump off of them. In this, you can actually jump up, and there's the dagger. The game really likes to troll you with dagger drops, which is kind of aggravating, especially when you accidentally pick it up. If you ever see a dagger, it's best to just kind of, like, play it safe and just stand there until it disappears. Pretty much all drops from those floating masks would just disappear over time. You can also crawl in this game, which is interesting. That actually is a mechanic that is used later on in the game. There's little crevices and whatnot, little holes you can crawl through, and it's pretty much a mandatory function. There's another dagger. We're just going to play it safe. I've tried jumping over those before, and while it is possible to jump over them, it's also possible to not jump over them just right and end up picking up the weapon that you don't want. We're just going to fall over here. And we're going to fall down here. That's the axe. The axe is actually the most powerful weapon in the game, but I'm not a fan of its reach. I'd rather just stick with this weapon, which has a more moderate reach, while still dishing out some decent damage. And there's the dagger again. If you ever see the dagger, just wait. And I think there might be an extra life right here. Yep, there it is. There's some more health. So one other thing about this game is, you know, and I don't want to make too many Castlevania comparisons, but it's, you know, this is kind of like a Castlevania channel in a way. You know, I've got Castlevania, aside from Doom, is, you know, pretty much the most featured franchise on this channel. It's one of my favorite gaming series of all time, one of my most played, and, you know, so it's very near and dear to me. And so it's kind of hard to play this game without making comparisons. But, you know, one thing you'll notice is that the level design in this game is quite clunky compared to... maybe clunky is the wrong term. No, I think clunky is right. Later on in the game, you'll see what I mean. It gets even worse. A lot of the levels are just kind of like sloppily put together. There's just random platforms all over the place. There's just very little rhythm or rhyme to, you know, some of the stages in this game, which is kind of a shame, because, you know, Castlevania's level design was very, very deliberate, and in this, it feels like, you know, there's some parts where, you know, the stage design is definitely deliberate, but there's other parts where it's just, it feels like they just copy and pasted, you know, random blocks onto the, you know, the levels, and that's it. So the stages in this game, for the most part, I think are very forgettable overall, and like you saw with that boss fight, I find a lot of the boss fights in this game to be relatively forgettable as well. A couple of the ones at the end I do enjoy, but these first two bosses in particular just really don't have a whole lot going on. They're very simplistic, but they're not even interesting to look at. It's just, that was just a dude jumping around like whoop-de-doo. I saw dudes walking around and shooting at me just leading up to that boss. I mean, it's just underwhelming. That's all it is. So on this stage, you've got these guys that blink in the background. They'll fall down and they'll basically chase after you. So, and this is an enemy type that's actually featured many times throughout the rest of the game. And this game likes to regurgitate enemies as well, even when they don't really fit with the level theme. There's going to be some like possessed furniture on this level as well, and paintings and chairs and whatnot. And they fit really well on this level, because you feel like you're in a mansion and you go to like banquet halls and things like that. But later on in the game, you're gonna see them in like these dungeon areas, and it's just, you know, again, it's relatively sloppy. It's like little thought was actually put into, you know, what enemies were featured at certain points throughout the game. And I don't want to sound like I'm railing on this game too much. It's just, as a Castlevania fan, I just find, you know, this game had a lot of potential, and I feel like that potential wasn't realized. Either by short-sighted developers, or maybe they were rushed, or I don't know what the deal was. The game was made by Sims, apparently, and I do know that Sims has a pretty decent track record. So I don't know what was going on with that. I'd be interested to hear the development story of this game. Now, what's actually kind of cool is I actually watched a long play of the Game Gear version right before doing this video. The Game Gear version is actually the one I always wanted back in the day. I actually owned a Sega Game Gear, and I absolutely loved that thing as a kid, and played it a lot. And I feel like if I played this game back in the day on the Game Gear, I would have a greater respect for the game. I think I would have absolutely loved this game back in the day. But now, you know, having, you know, turned into the Castlevania connoisseur that I am, you know, it's a lot easier to see this game's flaws and whatnot. But what's interesting about the Game Gear version is that, this, you know, the display size on the Game Gear is smaller, so everything looks bigger on the Game Gear version, and the screen is more scrunched in. And some parts of the game have actually been altered. Like that section just a little while ago where, you know, you had enemies just spawning in over and over. That's really tiny in the Master System, not Master System, the Game Gear version. And it's actually almost kind of more interesting. It's almost like the game might have been designed with the Game Gear in mind. And if so, like, that might actually be the ideal version of this game to play. And so what I'd like to do sometime is actually, oh man, I'd love to eventually get a Game Gear like component modded or something, so I can hook it up to my upscaler and actually get some, you know, direct Game Gear capture footage. That would be amazing, because there's definitely some Game Gear stuff I'd love to do, because while I played the Master System as a kid, I never owned one until the late 90s when I started collecting games. However, the Game Gear I did own as a kid, and so it got a lot of playtime when I was younger, and so I actually have a lot more nostalgia for the Game Gear itself than I do the Master System. And, you know, a lot of the Master System's games I actually experienced in Game Gear form, where, you know, the screen size was smaller, so the sprites looked much larger, and it's just what I'm used to. So I'd love to play this on the Game Gear, and, you know, see what my thoughts are like after playing that one. The Master System version, you know, there's a lot of screen space here, and the game can feel empty at times, unfortunately. But on the Game Gear, I think that, you know, some of my complaints would go away because of the smaller screen size and, you know, the more claustrophobic feel. So if any of you guys have actually played the Game Gear version, I'm really curious to know how you feel about that versus the Master System one, if you have played the Master System one as well. But yeah, I remember seeing this game on the Game Gear on store shelves and being like, "Oh, that looks so awesome!" Because, you know, I've always loved, you know, horror-themed platformers and whatnot, and action games. You know, I've always been a fan of the Castlevania series. Even when I was young, I was very enamored by that franchise, all the way back to the original Castlevania on the NES. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drop straight down, because unfortunately there's this pit that you can fall down into that the game doesn't tell you about until you figure it out. Some of the backgrounds are actually pretty decent in this game, though. Like, I really enjoy the first level. This part actually isn't too bad. You can see a sky and clouds just sort of floating by. That's pretty cool. I just wish there was more attention to detail like that throughout this game. There's a lot of backgrounds throughout this game that are just very flat. Like here we are again with just a completely still background. Nothing really moving, unfortunately. It's not like, say, Ninja Gaiden on the Master System, which is actually, some of you guys are going to hate me for this, but it's not a game I'm a huge fan of either, for totally different reasons. But it's got a lot of detail in the backgrounds and movement, which really livens up these old 8-bit games. Just little tiny things like that sky, the clouds moving across the top of the screen can just make things look so much more interesting. And I feel like when people think about these old games and they wonder why they stand out so much, it's little details like that that make a huge difference. So right here, you pretty much just have to attack this skull. Nothing too fancy. Another boss that's just kind of like, eh. I mean, at least it looks a little more creepy than the first boss. The first boss was just kind of gimpy. It's just a dude jumping around. And this is actually a skull floating around, which fits the theme a lot more, I feel. Although I think the first boss is technically supposed to be like Jack the Ripper or something, but he just looks like a normal dude. It's not really anything special, unfortunately. This boss still doesn't really do anything inherently special either, but it's still more in line with the overall theme of the game, which makes it fit a little bit better. I think that actually would have been a better first boss. They should have had that as the first boss, and then they should have had a more interesting second boss. But, I mean, that's neither here nor there. This game is very old, 25 years old basically, as of doing this video, so it is what it is. We just gotta deal with it. Alright, round 3. So we're almost halfway through the game now. You know, yeah, we're actually technically over halfway through the game, I think. Close to it. No, just about halfway through the game. Yeah, so again, the first 4 rounds have 3 stages within them, and the 5th round, the final round, only has 1 stage, and it's a relatively short stage, assuming you know where to go. Unfortunately, this game has a few maze-like areas, and that sort of starts with this level, and that carries on for pretty much the rest of the game. And that's kind of like a take it or leave it sort of, you know, thing. I'm not a huge fan of games that are supposed to be linear, having non-linear elements. I'd prefer it just to be all or nothing. I'd rather either a game that's completely non-linear, or a game that is completely linear. Like Castlevania is completely linear. Let's see if I can... Oh, I wasn't able to get that. I went off screen. And I don't think I can go back either. Well, I can, but the mask is gone, unfortunately. So, like, this is one of the first examples of being able to, you know, take multiple paths. What we need to do, though, is actually fall down that center vertical column area, that center pit. And so we're going to work our way to the top here. And I actually wish I got that health. I think we'll still be fine. So we're just going to fall down here. And I'm going to go ahead and just pick that up, just because I can. If you pick up, you know, the main weapon that you already have, you'll get some points for it. Nothing too special. Alright, I don't think there's going to be health over here, but I'm going to try anyway. I'm just going to see what it is. And I'm not going to bother with that. And we can't actually get over there. Extra life. And we're just going to come over here. There's a couple parts throughout this game that are a little tricky. You know, you've really got to figure things out through experimentation. And that's a pistol. I don't really like the pistol in this game, actually. It's a really kind of a rinky-dink weapon. And there we go. So what you'll find is there's also forced secrets in this game in terms of progression, and that's another thing I'm not a huge fan of. You know, having to dig around to find secrets in linear games like this, I think is kind of annoying, honestly, and I feel like it breaks the flow of the game. You know, for linear games like this, I prefer to have just really deliberate stage design that isn't confusing. That's the big thing. Isn't confusing. But this game, unfortunately, can get a little confusing. But that's what I'm here for. So if you guys have any problems with this game, or if you're thinking about playing this for yourself, you're gonna get to see where the secrets are and whatnot. The forced secrets, I should say. That way, when you play this game, you'll know exactly where to go, and you won't have to wander around aimlessly like I did, you know, the first time I played this game. So, you'll notice that there's some ceilings in this game that you can just jump through, but there's others that you can't. So notice how I'm not going all the way up. I need to watch out for that. On that part specifically. I've actually hit my head on that wall before, that ceiling, and fell down into that pit. More health. So while really none of this game is anywhere near as difficult as, you know, pretty much most of the Castlevania series, with a couple of exceptions like Castlevania Legends, which is an absurdly easy Castlevania game, there are parts of this game that, you know, it definitely helps to be precise and to know exactly what to do. Like, oh, I'm gonna bump my head on this this ceiling here. I should probably watch out for that. And it is possible to actually jump up and land on that platform up top, but I found it's actually very difficult to do it. It is possible, but it's difficult to pull it off. So if I wanted to, I could use the boomerang here to pick off these bats. And I'm gonna go ahead and pick that up too, just to add to my ammunition. So unlike Castlevania, where you're constantly picking up hearts, or in certain cases, like in Castlevania Bloodlines, you're picking up orbs, I'm actually not supposed to go here. I'm supposed to go up top. You'll notice that there's no pickups of hearts or orbs or anything like that to add to ammunition. You just pick up more of the same type of your sub-weapon, and that'll basically just increase the amount of times you can use it. So if you like a sub-weapon, you should probably just keep it and try to keep picking up the same one. Oops. So again, this leads to the somewhat confusing stage design. The exit was up there, but there was really no indication that should have been an exit. There was no specialized art, no door, no nothing that looked unique. And with the fact that you can actually take the level from multiple directions, you can get lost in this game, I think, kind of unnecessarily. But again, that's what I'm here for. I can show you the ropes, and if you want to play this game, you can just jump right in with hopefully not getting lost. This is another nod to Castlevania right here. We're gonna jump over here and see what this is. Yeah, I'd rather have this than the boomerang. Boomerang is useful, without a doubt, but this bomb is definitely more powerful, for sure, and that's especially a good thing for boss fights. And generally speaking, I try to save it in normal stages if I can. Like, if these guys are just dashing up at me, I'd rather just smack him in the face with whatever weapon I have. Kind of like that. And I'm not gonna grab that pistol. Again, I'm not a fan of the pistol. It's just it's a really tiny projectile. It goes across the screen really slowly. And you know, it's good for picking off like bats in the distance or something like that. but for the most part, it's not powerful at all, which is odd. You would think a gunshot would be one of the most powerful things, but not in Master of Darkness. Alright, so we're gonna come up top here to get on this pendulum. Just like so. We're gonna jump over here, and then jump... or not. Get hit by those spikes. Like, why those spikes are there, who knows. And why that dagger's there, who knows. Alright, so we're actually nearing the boss fight. We're gonna jump up here to grab some health, just like so. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, that was good. There was a bunch of guys that ran and jumped off the, you know, the edge, letting you know that you should do the same. But I feel like there's not enough areas in the game that, you know, indicate where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to do. Just gonna keep smacking this guy like this. And that's it. This is a decent boss fight. I like how you have to, like, really focus on him going around in circles. He does eventually do an attack where he just, like, dashes straight at you. And what I noticed in this game is that if you attack a boss and they're blinking, they can just go right through you without dishing out damage to you. So it's really good to know on that boss in particular. So we've got another set of 3 stages, and then we've got our final one and done level on round 5. And this is where the birds start appearing. If you thought the birds in the Castlevania games were annoying, wait until you see the birds in Master of Darkness. They are a little frustrating to deal with. For one, they're a hell of a lot larger. I'm just gonna try to jump over them if I can. And I don't want that. Again, as you see, you know, the game likes to troll you. It's like, hey, here's the worst weapon in the game. You know you want to touch it. Touch it. Come on. Alright, let's just go down these stairs. I don't care about that bird. More health, unnecessarily so. So you'll notice how, you know, things are pretty easy in this compared to, you know, some of the Castlevania games. Like, they're very, very generous with health drops and whatnot. For one, enemies dish out less damage in this game than they do in the Castlevania series. But also the health drops are much more frequent in this game. Look, there's another one. You know, 2 or 3 screens later, you get another health refill, even though you don't actually need it. Alright, this could be a little aggravating here. Just like that. It's very easy to get hit by that spike. We're gonna trigger this dog by jumping over. And then just smack him like that. Oh, and look at this! Look at what we got. That was my fault. This is why you try not to just jump and attack into those masks. Another extra life. Alright. We got the sword. It's a little bit better. It's still not ideal, but it's better than the dagger. Alright, so there's sort of a mandatory secret here as well. Let's try to kill this bird, or not. Ah, I'm attacking way too early. There we go. So there's some health right here, and another bird. Really? Come on. Thank you. Jeez. So you gotta attack these blocks and then fall down here just like this. And then duck. So here's our pistol. Look at that. It's a little pea shooter. So again, it's good for picking off enemies like bats and whatnot. Like this bat up here, I can try to pick it off, just like that. That's about as much as it's good for, in my opinion. Alright, there we go. There's my preferred weapon. And more tables and chairs for some odd reason. In an environment that they don't really fit in. And more health that I did not need. We'll go ahead and pick this up. Actually, I'll take this. That's better. Less ammo, but it's more powerful. Alright, so this part, you have to destroy the enemy that's just sort of standing still. So we're going to go all the way over here to the right. And we need to go up these stairs here. Just like so. We do this a few more times throughout this level. And that's that. You'll notice how these bats are just kind of, their patterns are just really obnoxious in this game. There's so many patterns in this with the bats where they just sort of like fly around in circles. It's a very common thing in this game, unfortunately. Alright, I'm not going to worry about that. And I think, nope, not yet. Let's just wait. More health. Alright, so we have to come back down here. Alright, I'm just gonna tank. So some of the level designs are pretty obnoxious as well, like those areas with just all those spikes and whatnot. I mean, at least the spikes, to be fair, don't kill you in one hit, but I just feel like they were just unnecessary. They just stopped the flow of the game. They were just there to irritate the player. Alright, so this sort of like spiky drill kind of weapon is probably the best sub-weapon in the game. It's very powerful, it goes all the way across the screen, and it cuts through multiple enemies. So we're pretty much just going to focus on keeping this weapon for pretty much the rest of the playthrough. Okay, spoke too soon. We accidentally picked up the boomerang again, so... But that's okay, we'll get that drill weapon again later on. And we're gonna just come over here. We're gonna tank again. Oops. We basically needed to go through there. There is some health up here, which is good to know, because my health is getting lower. You know, those enemies that come out of the walls, I think it would have been really cool if they mixed them up and made it so they were like different sprites that fit in more with this environment. You know, make them like Frankenstein's monster type monsters, you know, or something like that. I think that would have been really neat. But taking these chicks in dresses is... It doesn't fit this environment at all. The little zombie grunts, whatever, but we've seen them already. You know, and they've been around for a while. It would have been really nice if they mixed up the enemy designs a little bit. You know, it's kind of hard to fault Castlevania given that, you know, the original game is 1986 and this was 6 years later. There we go. I mean, I do like that part of the backgrounds in this level are actually animating. You know, you've got all those that machinery in the background with the meters and whatnot ticking. That's pretty cool. I like that. All right, so this guy has a very limited window of you know, weakness. So he basically flies around as these little projectiles that you have to dodge. They'll hurt you. And then unfortunately, he's jumped up. He's way too high, so... Alright, that's that. Now we're on to the final stage of the game. Alright, final round. Here we go. Yeah, so in this round, you've got you know, multiple ways you can go as well, and you basically have to find a secret exit in order to get to the boss fight. So we're gonna actually come up here and not pick that up. And we're just gonna come over here like so. Come down these stairs. And let's see what this is. This might be the pistol. And it is. And I picked it up! Wow. Figured I would have just avoided it. That's alright. Not a big deal. So this is our drill weapon again, right here. And another one. And let's see what this is up here. Alright, good. Alright, so this is actually where you need to go. You need to smack that. There's an extra life. And then that'll basically just... You could just loop this infinitely, actually. It's kind of funny. Just like so. And this is basically the lead up to the final boss fight, and they toss you a dagger right at the very end. Like, why? Why? Alright, and this is it. This is the final fight. There's multiple forms here. I do like this fight. There's more going on in this fight than there is in, you know, most other boss fights in this game, which is nice. So you basically got to watch out for these, you know, these spikes coming up from the bottom. And then jump up on these falling platforms. And that's it. I didn't really explain that. I figured, you know, it's just kind of pretty basic for the most part. Nothing too tricky. Probably the trickiest part is when he throws that purplish fireball down at an angle. It's actually not hard to avoid. I'm just kind of really lazy right now. It's usually at this point in the game, I usually stop caring. I'm just like, yeah, I want this to be over with. But yeah, that's Vampire, or Master of Darkness, more specifically. You know, I sound like I've been really hard on the game throughout this playthrough, and, you know, while I personally feel like I should just be playing something else, like a Castlevania game when I play this game, it is still a decent game. It's definitely got some, you know, decent visuals, it's got some decent music here and there, some of the boss fights are alright. The controls are definitely responsive, and they feel well, they feel good. I like the floaty nature of your jumps, which gives you lots of control mid-air, which is nice. And I like being able to jump off the staircases and whatnot, which is a nice feature. So, you know, don't take my words too seriously. I mean, take them seriously, but, I mean, enjoy the game. You know, if you like this game a lot, I don't fault you for it. It's definitely a lot more... I think welcoming than Castlevania is. I think Castlevania is just a way more polished franchise as a whole, that is a lot more interesting to go through, especially mechanically speaking, when you talk about the gameplay mechanics, and then the music and the graphics and whatnot. But Castlevania can also be brutal. You know, it can really just drag you over the coals, you know. This game, on the other hand, it's a lot easier. There's so many health pickups and whatnot. And if you've played the Castlevania games and you enjoy them, but you're having a hard time with them, play this game. You might enjoy it due to its easier difficulty. I don't think the game's anywhere near as memorable as you know, the Castlevania franchise, and even other just side-scrolling, you know, action games from this time period. But it is still a solid game. I do still recommend checking it out and giving it a try. Prices on this have probably gone up, unfortunately, just like, you know, most prices in retro gaming have. But there's always flashcards and emulation and stuff like that, and you've also got the Game Gear version as well. Maybe one of these years we'll revisit this via the Game Gear version, and we'll, you know, maybe then we'll see how I feel about it. So, but yeah, Master of Darkness. I'm glad I finally got around to doing this Let's Play. This is one that's been, you know, requested for a long time, and it's one that's spoken of frequently on forums. You know, when people talk about, you know, good action games on the Master System or Game Gear, they talk about this game. Especially due to its Castlevania similarities and gameplay elements. So yeah, glad I finally got around to it. I hope you guys enjoyed this playthrough. You know, if you're just stopping into my channel for the first time, I did a bunch of other Let's Plays, horror-themed retro Let's Plays this past month as well, like Castlevania Chronicles for the PlayStation, Super Castlevania 4, on the Super Nintendo, Super Ghouls and Ghosts on the Super Nintendo, as well as Shadowgate on the NES. And I've got some other stuff up my sleeve for the rest of this month as well. And yeah, so if you're interested in that sort of thing, feel free to follow my channel here and you know, check out the back catalog of Let's Plays. But yeah, I'm out, guys. Thanks for watching. For all you guys already subbed, thank you for your usual support. I really appreciate it. And thanks once again to our Patreon backers and live stream super chatters. It's much appreciated, guys. So take care, guys. I'll see you soon. And until the next video, take it easy.